The WHO has undergone an international effort to create a vaccine for the COVID-19 outbreak, which would be available to the entire world in order to stop this pandemic from getting even worse. As we have seen with past pandemics, usually these things that occur on century cyclical cycles last several years. The Spanish flu, yellow fever, etc., they have all lasted a significant amount of time, some up to 2 years. So obviously you would create a vaccine, a technology that we have now that we did not have 100 years ago, which would significantly improve the situation. Well, the United States has decided that they are not going to participate in the international efforts of this vaccine research. A spokesman for the U.S. mission told Reuters that there will be no U.S. official participation in the program, which aims to very quickly develop a vaccine to deal with the current fight against the virus. The nation's withdrawal from the collaborative international efforts in the wake of the pandemic follows Donald Trump's announcement that the U.S. would suspend funding to the WHO after he accused the United Nations agency of covering up the coronavirus outbreak from China. He attacked the organization as he faced similar criticisms after reports showed that he had dismissed or ignored warnings about the threat of the outbreak from his administration for several weeks. Now, the international effort to pool resources in order to create a vaccine for the COVID-19 outbreak was launched by French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, among other world leaders, on Friday. This is a very significant international effort in order to deal with the outbreak. The Trump administration's response to leaving state and local governments to fend for themselves are also absent of a consistent federal effort to contain the outbreak, and these individual states may end up actually relying on international organizations for support in dealing with this outbreak, since they have essentially been abandoned by their own federal government. Now, the U.S. has not given any very specific reason for refusing to participate in this program when it's very clearly in the interests of everyone in the world, which includes the average American. It is my opinion that the reason the U.S. is refusing to participate in this global effort is because there are American pharmaceutical companies working on a vaccine themselves. And if the U.S. develops it before the international effort does, the patent will belong to a U.S. company. And then they will be able to charge whatever they want to the people around the world who desperately need this vaccine. One that would be created by a collaborative effort by the WHO and many other countries would essentially make such an attempt at medical extortion impossible. That would be available to everyone all across the world at a decent price, which many countries would be able to afford to take care of this crisis. However, if the United States gets the vaccine first, they will essentially charge into the poorhouse essentially anyone and everyone who simply are not even among the super elite. I mean, it's very clear that this is about profits. Now, the reason I think the United States would do this, other than the fact that this is perfectly the kind of thing that they would actually do, we did see the recent case where a whistleblower told the public in public media, the public in Germany, about an attempt by the U.S. to buy a potential vaccine from a German company in order to control the patent and then thus the profits that would flow from it. So it would seem that the United States has already attempted to do this already. The move created such a massive outroar inside of Germany, and anybody else who has even most basic humanity ended up causing this to be canceled. So we absolutely cannot ignore the fact that a huge pile of resources, that being the mega pharmaceutical corporations in the United States, are not cooperating with other large pools of resources across the world to find a vaccine because they want the money. Now, isn't it the free market ideology that says, well, if they're all racing towards the same goal, then that will make the racing possible, and without it, there would totally be no vaccine because then nobody would have an incentive to do it? What we are seeing is, frankly, kind of the opposite. The profit motive in this case is fracturing the pool of resources available to be able to develop this vaccine, because the United States is withholding a great deal of them in order to forward their own rational, so-called rational, economic interest. It's laid very clear right in front of us. But then we also ask ourselves, where do these resources come from? The plastic, all the materials necessary, all of this, everything right down to the roads in the United States that the vaccine would be transported on. Where do they come from? The value that's created by their generation is frequently stolen from the third world. And not even just the third world, the second world, or even other first world countries in general. The private property ideology has taken these resources, which essentially do belong to not just the people who created them, but the other countries in which the resources came from, or even the value itself came from, and is taking them and withholding them from that same global effort to take care of this viral outbreak that threatens humanity. And I think that's a real analysis of what's going on and why it is morally reprehensible what I believe that the United States is doing. They are hindering the effort, and that's reprehensible. The reason why is my opinion, because there's no definitive proof on that, but I think I kind of really hit the nail on the head on that one. I think this one's a little bit obvious. And what we see is the free market ideology deliberately jeopardizing possibly tens of millions of people's lives across the world simply to line their own pockets. And this is the kind of thing that they would do. A number of years ago, the pharmaceutical company Bayer sold AIDS-tainted blood to Asia, Europe, and Latin America in full knowledge that it was tainted with AIDS. They ended up having to make a big payout for the victims of their indifference towards the suffering they caused. So they were, the company was indicted for it, and they had to pay reparations to those people, which paled in comparison to the amount of profits they actually made. So the pharmaceutical industry would definitely do something as cold-blooded as withhold information if they're willing to go as far as deliberately infect people with AIDS for profit. So I think a lot of those who are thinking that somehow capitalism is, not responsible for the terrible handling of the virus in many countries and think that somehow it's going to save them. Not only is capitalism very clearly falling into crisis, and we're finding out who the real essential people in the economy are, but we're also seeing how the free market ideology is deliberately and maliciously holding back the ability to find a vaccine. The only good that can come out of this is that hopefully the vaccine will be found by the international organizations before it is found by any pharmaceutical companies in the United States. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.